Hey there, it's me again. I'm Amy, the MA mentor. Hope you're having a great day today. We are going to delve into the world of microbiology today. It's one of those subjects that a lot of MA students and even MAs, quite honestly, have a little bit of a problem grasping because it's not horribly complicated. I think it's just the scientific end of it. So I'm going to do my best to make that easier for you to comprehend today and a little bit easier to deal with. So let's go ahead and we will jump right into the world of microbiology. And as always, if you haven't already, please click the like, subscribe, and alert bells. It really helps me out with the channel and helps to allow me to create more content and bring you more learning. So here we go. Let's talk about microbiology. What is microbiology? Well, microbiology is the scientific study of microorganisms and what they do. What are microorganisms? They are little tiny living entities, I guess you could call them, organisms that are found pretty much everywhere. They're in the air, they're in the food, water, soil, plants, animals, humans, they're everywhere and on everything. Um, for the most part, the majority of them are pretty harmless and really don't do anything. There's really only a few, unbelievably enough, that are capable of causing disease, and those are what are known as pathogens and referred to as being pathogenic. Um, we also have primarily on our body what we call normal flora, which is harmless. For the most part, they're microorganisms that are normally like in or on the body, but don't cause any harm or disease. As a matter of fact, sometimes they're referred to as the good bacteria, or the good microorganisms, that can actually help to fend off some of the bad stuff. So we need our normal flora. So let's talk about the microorganisms that cause disease. Here are all my little friends. Um, there are just a handful, a lot of them, but just a handful of categories. Bacteria and viruses are probably the two most common pathogenic microorganisms or disease-causing pathogens. I think just because they're so numerous. We also have protozoa, not as common. Fungi, he's a really fun guy. That's the one you want to take to a party with you. But a bump, no, okay. Um, which is basically yeast. Hey, I have a coffee cup that says I'm a fun guy on it. And then parasites, of course, which are basically little bugs, sort of. Let's break down what all of these are. So bacteria, they are single-celled microorganisms. They are classified by shape. So when you look through a microscope and you see a bacteria, you know what it is based on its shape, okay? Or what category anyway. Um, Coccus are round. Spirillus are spiral or kind of squiggly. Bacillus are rod-shaped, and Vibrio are like comma-shaped, okay? Here is what they all kind of look like. And of course, they are not this color. When bacteria, fungus, parasites, anything that you're looking through a microscope at, is mounted on a slide, it's usually stained or dyed a specific color so you can see it, because otherwise it would be basically translucent and you really wouldn't see anything. So this is Staphylococci. Now, coccus, by the way, is a singular version of the word, and cocci is plural. So staphylococci are the round shaped because they're cocci, and they are arranged in clusters like grapes. Okay. Um, there are two kind of main types of staph. We refer to it a lot as staph. There's Staphylococcus epidermidis, which is normally present on the skin and in the mucous membranes. 9 times out of 10 non-pathogenic, doesn't cause disease. However, if there's a cut in the skin and there's, an immense like cluster of these present, it can get into the body and cause an infection. However, that is not typical. And then there's Staphylococcus aureus. If you've ever heard MRSA, MRSA, the SA stands for Staphylococcus aureus. The MR is methicillin resistant, meaning it is a pathogen, which Staphylococcus aureus is a pathogen that is associated with things like boils and pimples and abscesses, sometimes food poisoning, wound infections. But the MR part, the methicillin resistant part, is the fact that it is resistant to certain types of antibiotic. And that happens when we misuse antibiotics, don't take them properly, doctors over-prescribe them. Don't get me on my soapbox about that. But that is what happens in many cases, and it's really, really hard to kill those infections. This is streptococci. These are, of course, your round cocci, because it is that type of bacteria, but these grow in chains, okay? And these are responsible for infections like strep throat or streptococcal sore throat, scarlet fever, rheumatic fever, certain kinds of pneumonia, sepsis, impetigo, okay, just various types of strep-related infection. This is diplococci. Diplococci, as the name may suggest, DI means two. So these are round, of course, because it's cocci, but these grow in pairs. These two are responsible for certain types of pneumonia, gonorrhea, and meningitis, bacterial meningitis. Oh, I am so sorry, that was too quick. Bacillus. Bacillus is our rod-shaped, I feel like I went too far here. Nope, I did not. Okay. Bacillus is our rod-shaped bacteria. Sorry, brain fart. And you can see that there, they are shaped like rods. Bacillus is singular, bacilli is plural. These are found primarily in soil and air. They can form spores, little protected spores. You see these present as the cause of things like botulism, tetanus, gangrene, gastroenteritis, because salmonella is a bacilli. Typhoid fever, pertussis, dysentery, diphtheria, and tuberculosis. Okay. What is pictured here on the screen is actually E. coli, which E. coli is one of those normal, it's sort of a normal flora. So it's normal flora in certain parts of your body, but not in others. So normal flora, again, refers to a microorganism that is harmless in the area in which it lives. Well, E. coli does live in the gut usually. However, if it finds its way outside of there, then it can cause illness. Okay. So where it is fine. When it gets out of there, it is not. There is an equivalent for this for cats. And the illness is called toxoplasmosis. There is a bacteria that lives in the guts of cats, which doesn't hurt the cat, generally doesn't hurt humans, except pregnant females. This is why they tell women when they're pregnant not to mess with cats and not to clean up after cats. Because if it lives in their guts and it comes out in their feces, where's their feces? They're cat boxes. So it's kind of the human equivalent there. Spirillus, singular, spirilla, plural. These are your spiral or curved bacteria. This is the causative agent for syphilis, which is an STD, a very dangerous STD. Here are Vibrio, the little comma-shaped guys. These guys, some of them have tails too, to swim around. This particular one that I've got on screen is Vibrio cholera. Cholera is this is a causative agent for cholera. Cholera well, is in some parts of the world still underdeveloped, way underdeveloped countries, um, a bacteria that causes horrible diarrhea and vomiting and gastrointestinal issues. It was eradicated for developed nations because of sewage systems and water treatment and just hygiene in general, as well as the water issues. But cholera is still around in certain parts of the world. All right, let's talk about viruses. Viruses are the smallest living organisms. Um, they use nutrients inside their host cells to survive and to do everything else, to replicate, reproduce, live, everything. Um, this is just a small list of what viruses can cause. Influenza, chickenpox, rubeola, which is measles, rubella, which is German measles, mumps, poliomyelitis, smallpox, rabies, herpes simplex, herpes zoster, yellow fever, hepatitis, and most of the diseases of the respiratory tract, like the common cold. Okay. Viruses are tough because you can't see a virus under a microscope. You actually have to look at viruses under electron microscopes, which are like a gajillion times magnification. So just under your regular, like you'd have in a science class or even in a doctor's office microscope, you can't see a virus. They're that small. The fungus. So fungus is singular, fungi is plural. These can cause yeast infections or candidiasis. Excuse me, thrush, ringworm, PCP pneumonia. Fungus cause that. So as you can see, pneumonia can be caused by a lot of different things. One thing I failed to mention with viruses, there is also a viral form of meningitis as well as a fungal form of meningitis too. PCP pneumonia though, not as much now, but used to be before they found really good effective treatments for HIV, was usually what HIV patients, AIDS patients would die of, was PCP pneumonia. All right, parasites. If you don't like bugs, I am sorry. But parasites are things like roundworms, flatworms, tapeworms, ticks, lice, mites. Those are all pictured here. These are not this big, obviously. They're minuscule, minuscule. Okay. I'm sorry I said the L word. You're probably scratching your head now. But parasites will latch onto or get inside of its host, and it cannot live without a host. So once it is in there, it is feeding off the host and living off the host. Other classifications of microorganisms or other ways to classify microorganisms is by the type of organism they are. So viruses are usually classified as subcellular microorganisms, meaning they're non-cellular and they're surrounded by a protein coat. Prokaryotic bacteria is usually classified that way because it is very simple. There's no nucleus, there's no organelles. I will be doing a video on body organization and structure, and we talk about cells in there. But a cell of any kind really generally will have a nucleus and then little things floating around within the cell called organelles. Prokaryotic cells do not have that. Prokaryotic organisms do not have that. And that is a bacteria. So bacteria do not have a nucleus or organelles. Eukaryotic microorganisms do. They're very structured. They have a nucleus. They have organelles. They're more of what your typical cell you would think of. And those are your protozoans, your fungi, and your parasites. Now let's talk about infection real quick. I am going to follow this video up with a video on how to collect specimens and point of care testing and lab procedures. Um, but pathogenic infection. So infection is literally the invasion by a pathogen, whether it be on your skin, inside your body, whatever. The first line of defense for us is the skin and the mucous membranes. Other lines of defense can include things like coughing, sneezing, tears, sweat. If the defense works, either first line or other lines, great, the pathogen's destroyed or expelled and there's no infection. And that can be antibodies as well. If the defenses do not work, then pathogens overtake the body and the person becomes ill with whatever infection or disease that pathogen causes. There are stages of infection, and I do apologize for this yellow one. It's hard to see, but I will tell you what it says. So the incubation period is when organisms are growing and multiplying, and each infection, disease, pathogen has its own incubation period, and it's basically from the time you're exposed to the time usually that you start seeing symptoms. The prodromal stage is when the person is most infectious. Sometimes very vague and non-specific signs of the disease are occurring in this case. So if it's something that causes a fever, you might start to see a little onset of fever here. Full stage of illness is when the presence of very specific signs and symptoms of the disease are coming on or overtaking are strongest. And then the yellow that is very difficult to see, I am sorry, is the convalescent period, which is when the person is then recovering from the infection. All right, so that is kind of a microbiology in a nutshell, Cliff Notes kind of version. Um, Again, if you have not already, please like and subscribe to my channel so that I can keep doing this. I really, really want to help people understand this stuff a little bit better. And I'm hopefully in the future going to also provide some study materials for things like national exams and stuff like that. But without you all, I can't keep going. So please, please, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all next time. Thank you so much.